So, with the Metroid Prime 4 hype continuing to grow and grow with each passing week, I thought it would be good to discuss some of the expectations and the comparisons that I continue to see a lot of folks make out there surrounding the game. So there is certainly a lot of pressure on Metroid Prime 4 to be of a certain quality for the Metroid franchise, to be a certain quality of sequel, as well as to perform a certain way, I think, and to be received critically very, very high, and to sell very, very well. All of these things that we want to see the Metroid franchise continue to do as fans, a lot of this rests on how Metroid Prime 4 Beyond ultimately goes over. And because of that, there are a lot of really interesting and valuable and fun conversations happening around what we've seen from the game so far. You know, there are critiques and there are some things people say that I think are sometimes unfair. Some of the critiques are also fair, so it really just depends on what you're talking about. But what I want to do is discuss a little bit more in detail how some folks seem to be putting unfair expectations on the game to be a different kind of game than it was ever trying to be. So let's just jump into this. As the title suggests, the main thing I want to talk about is this comparison to Breath of the Wild. A lot of people saying or speculating or desiring for Metroid Prime 4 to represent some sort of titanic Breath of the Wild-like shift for the Metroid franchise, the way that game also shifted the Zelda franchise when it released. Now, of course, I'm no crazy person. Breath of the Wild is an incredible game. It is basically a 10 out of 10. I would say it's in my top 10 video games of all time. And there are some elements about Breath of the Wild that I would like to see Metroid Prime 4 emulate. Most importantly would be the sales success and the popularity of that game and what it actually did for the Zelda franchise, which already was a strong selling and very popular franchise. But Breath of the Wild really kind of ushered in an entirely new era for the game, both in terms of the gameplay and the style and the visuals and all of that. But like I said, more on how well received it was, how many new players jumped on board, how well it sold, and like I said, it really kind of shifted, I think, the future fates of the Zelda franchise in a positive way. So would I like to see Metroid Prime 4 represent that same kind of positive shift for the trajectory of the Metroid franchise? Absolutely, and in fact, I'll be optimistic here, you guys know me. I'll even predict that it probably will do that. I don't see a world where Metroid Prime 4 isn't super popular and super successful, again, relative to the Metroid franchise, and that would only be a good thing. But here's the thing. When a lot of folks out there say that they want Metroid Prime 4 to do a Breath of the Wild for the Metroid franchise, they're not really talking just about the sales potential and the popularity of the franchise. They're talking about the gameplay, they're talking about open world, and they're talking about changing what the Metroid Prime series has traditionally been, from like a structural and a gameplay standpoint. And to me, I don't think that that's what we need to be asking Metroid Prime 4 to do. And for anyone who is basing maybe some of their disappointment off of what we've seen from Metroid Prime so far off of that, basically saying it doesn't look like a Breath of the Wild type shift, it's not a reboot or a refresh of the franchise, and so I'm not interested, that's where I get a little bit frustrated with critiques that I think are unfair. Because Metroid Prime 4 is not trying to do the things that Breath of the Wild did for the Zelda franchise. Metroid Prime 4 is a sequel in the truest sense of the word. I talked about this on my 41-minute breakdown of the treehouse footage of Metroid Prime 4, and I think we have to remind ourselves that Metroid Prime 4, just like the title suggests, is the fourth entry in an existing franchise. Obviously, the Metroid franchise on the whole branches far outside of the Prime lineage of games. I mean, we all know this. It's kind of like a spin-off series. There's the console trilogy. There are the three Prime spin-off games. I don't want to leave out Metroid Prime Pinball. That is a real game, and that game does matter. But you guys know what I mean. There's the Prime trilogy, essentially, and then there's the 2D numbered main series. Other M also existing as like a 3D spin-off that's in the continuity of the 2D games. But you really have got the 2D numbered games, you've got the Prime numbered games, and they're all in the same timeline, but they kind of operate as two independent stories and sagas and journeys for Samus. And because of that, we also have a very uniquely defined gameplay style for the Prime series. It's in first person, it's more adventure than shooter and action, even though yes, there is action in it. It's a little bit more about the mythical elements of the Chozo and Samus trying to interact with and save a lot of the races she comes across on different planets throughout the Prime trilogy. It's fascinating. I love it. It's like my favorite games ever. The first one, of course, is my actual favorite game of all time. And so when you look at the 3 Metroid Prime games, the console games 1, 2, and 3, spread across the GameCube and the Wii, you have a very consistent visual style, but more than that, a very consistent gameplay style. Again, as I had mentioned in my Treehouse breakdown, there is a rhythm and a cadence and a feel and a speed to everything that is Metroid Prime first-person gameplay. And again, it is consistent across the 3 games. There are unique elements and evolutions of the gameplay and the formula and new ideas introduced in each of those 3 games, but the actual rhythm and feel to the gameplay is essentially the same, even if you could argue that it gets a little bit better with each game, especially by the time that you get to the motion controls with Metroid Prime 3 on the Wii, which some people prefer and other people don't. I love them. I don't really have a preference. I like them both, but you know, they change things like you go from standard analog controls with the lock-on to the motion controls, but other than that, it is the same. And so, when we look at all of the footage we've seen of Metroid Prime 4 across 2 trailers and now 17 minutes worth of actual uncut gameplay, we can see evolved, better, smoother gameplay that is still otherwise consistent with everything Metroid Prime, okay? There is a number 4 in the title of Metroid Prime 4 for a reason, because it is not a reboot, it is not a refreshing of the franchise or the Prime saga, it is a sequel to Metroid Prime 3, it's a sequel to the Metroid Prime trilogy, and all it ever needed to do, even though it's been 18 years since Metroid Prime 3, is just look better, but play similarly. It's funny too, because I know over the 8 years, almost 8 years that I've been covering Metroid Prime 4 as a game with no confirmed details, no screenshots, no gameplay, no teasers, no nothing. I've been covering this game and discussing this game annually for 8 years, and I know that something that I've brought up several times on some of my many Metroid Prime 4 videos is how I always expected Metroid Prime 4, and even wanted Metroid Prime 4, to be kind of exactly what it is. It's beautiful, especially on the Switch 2. You look at the 4K gameplay, oh my goodness, my mouth just waters. It is so amazing. You can hear me gushing over it in my breakdown of the Treehouse footage. So all I ever expected and wanted was exactly what the game is. It looks like a Metroid Prime game in terms of gameplay and rhythm and speed and all that stuff I talked about. Well, actually, the speed does look improved, so you can see the improvements and the evolutions of the gameplay, but the skeleton and the structure of how you play a Metroid Prime game is all intact. It just looks beautiful. That's what I always wanted it to be and expected it to be. And I know that, you know, in years past, there's been these conversations that would pop up, I would see from people saying, oh, I hope Metroid Prime 4 turns out to be the Breath of the Wild for Metroid, and people asking for it to be open world, people asking for it to change up the Metroid formula or the Prime formula. And I've discussed in videos over the past that we shouldn't expect that, and we shouldn't really want that, because ever since they first showed it to us in June of 2017, they showed us a logo and it said Metroid Prime 4. The number 4 told me everything I needed to know, that it was probably going to be just like the Prime trilogy, only better looking. And that's, again, exactly what we've seen. I made these points in that video as well, that Halo 4 and Uncharted 4, 2 other franchises, one for Microsoft, one for Sony, that are number 4 games in a series of games, while they did make some upgrades and evolutions and slight adjustments along the way, those 2 games, Uncharted 4 and Halo 4, did not completely upend and alter the course and the gameplay and the look and the feel of those respective franchises. Making some tweaks and evolutions is not the same as completely changing everything about it. Those games had the number 4 in their title for a reason, just like Metroid Prime 4 does. That's the way I see it, and so people need to stop asking for Metroid Prime 4 to be this complete reboot of the Metroid franchise or of the Prime saga, because that is not the job of this game. The title told us from the jump that it was only ever going to be a sequel, and so I don't know how many other times I can say it in this video. The game is doing exactly what it promised it would. Now, to talk about the Zelda thing for a minute, I mean, I think we can talk in broad strokes about the idea of Metroid eventually introducing a new game or a new formula that tries to do some kind of open world thing. I don't know that I need Metroid to be purely open world. There is a level of freedom you have in all of the Metroid Prime games, and there's a lot of backtracking and going wherever you want, but there also is a bit of a linear and specifically designed path based on upgrades you get that open up new areas, so you both move through those games in a straight line while also having a good amount of flexibility and freedom to go into different places and do things at different times. That's part of what makes Metroid Metroid. But is there a future where some kind of Breath of the Wild scoped open world Metroid game could be created? Sure. You know, I've long said I want the franchise to revisit third-person 3D gameplay, you know, evolve what they tried with Other M, and I like Other M a lot and I defend it, but sure, you could definitely improve on a lot of aspects as well. So if they made a third-person action Metroid game in the future, and it's a brand new game, it's not a Metroid Prime game, it's not Metroid 6, it's something like how Other M released as like its own thing, as an in-between-quel or whatever they wanted to do. It's like a spin-off, basically. And it's a new Metroid game, third person, Samus lands on a planet, and she just has the whole planet to basically explore, or a gigantic section of the planet that is like the size of Hyrule and Breath of the Wild. Yeah, there's probably a really kick-ass Metroid game to be made there at some point. And so, if they want to introduce these ideas with a new Metroid game, then of course, I'm on board. And so I think the last point I want to leave you guys with is exactly that. People wanting Metroid Prime 4 to be the game that shakes up Metroid, changes the formula, makes things completely fresh, and especially for people who maybe have never been Metroid fans or Prime fans, who might be disappointed that Metroid Prime 4 is just another Metroid Prime game. What you're asking for is not Metroid Prime 4, okay, and that's fine. What you're asking for is a new Metroid game, just like the scenario I laid out. Maybe after Metroid Prime 4 and after Metroid 6, which we all kind of assume is being made, although it's obviously not confirmed, let's say these next two games come out over the course of the next 3 or so years on the Switch 2, then you can release maybe a new Metroid game, like I said, and call it Metroid the Revenge, Metroid Annihilation, you know, these goofy names that I made up in that last video. Metroid X, I think there's a way to make that kind of work in a title. And it's a spin-off. It's a new entry. It's designed from the ground up to be a reboot or something fresh. A fresh take. It's not a 2D numbered game. It's not a first-person Prime game. It's another game. That's where you can say, okay, Metroid, I didn't love the 2D games, I'm not into the first-person Prime games, but now I see a new, fresh take on Metroid in whatever this is, open world, Breath of the Wild style, third person, maybe it's even also first person, but just different than the Prime games. That's when we can allow for a new Metroid game to try to freshen things up, okay? But, as is the point of this video, and I've been driving into your skulls this whole conversation, Prime 4, it ain't that game, man. It is not that game. It is Metroid Prime 4. It is the sequel we want it to be. It's just another Metroid Prime game with better graphics and a very interesting story. That's the other hook to Prime 4, especially for those of us who are Metroid fans, Samus fans, and really care about the lore and the journey up to this point, is what the story is going to be. That's the other hook. Yes, it's the graphics. Yes, it's more first-person Prime gameplay, but also, what is going to happen between Samus and Psylocke? Is there another big bad? What's happening with the whole psychic abilities thing and her getting transported to Vuros? Who is this new alien race called the Lamorn or the Lamorn, whatever, however you pronounce it? That's the other part to Metroid Prime 4 that's exciting for Metroid fans. Or for people who do want to try jumping in for the first time with Prime 4. You know, and just kind of seeing what it's all about. Maybe you get to learn a story from the fourth entry instead of the first. I think they're going to probably make the barrier for entry hopefully fairly low for new players. And so, this is kind of my soapbox video. I really have been thinking about this pretty much since the Nintendo Direct trailer on March 27th. I saw people talking about that. And then a lot of the conversation continued after the treehouse footage. Granted, the treehouse footage is so impressive and fantastic and amazing that a lot of people also kind of changed their tunes. It got a lot of people who were a little bit critical more on board. So I think overall, hype is insanely strong for Prime 4, but there is that conversation from people who aren't sure about this or that, or again, for years I've been saying, do Breath of the Wild for Metroid, make it different, change it up. Oh no, Prime 4 is just another Prime game. I wanted it to be like Breath of the Wild. Like, that stuff is out there, and obviously to each their own, but as is the thesis of this video, Prime 4's job is not to be Breath of the Wild. Prime 4's job is to be a sequel to Metroid Prime 3. That's all I want it to be. That's what it looks like. It looks incredible. I can't wait to freaking play this game. I hope it comes out before December 31st this year, you know? So these are my thoughts. Share your own thoughts. Thanks, of course, for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time.